Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to a super special episode on the Homeopathy Hangout. So, in episode 296 of the podcast, I interviewed Mike Bridger, and he expressed some concerns about the direction in which homeopathy is going into. And we had a really fun and interesting discussion. And we promised that we would get a panel of people together for you. And we have. We have an incredible treat of not one or two or three, but seven incredible homeopaths on the podcast for you today. We're still waiting for number 7 to arrive, but we've started recording with 6. So I'm going to introduce them to you one by one. And I'm just going to go with the pictures on the screen. So I'll start with you, Marcus Fernandez, who's in the top. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's going to be an interesting debate. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Yes, it's going to be great.
And Hilery Dorian.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it too.
And the infamous Mike Bridger. Welcome.
Yeah, ready to cause mayhem and trouble. Move on, baby. Move on.
And Sarah Valentini.
Hello. I'm pretty excited for this conversation and a little bit scared as well.
You're allowed to feel all the feels. Everything's welcome.
Yeah.
And Danica Apolline-Matic. Welcome.
Thank you, Eugenie. It's really lovely to be here with everyone.
And Dion Tabrett.
Hi, folks. Good morning. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, I actually have this beautiful gong that I was going to use as a timer, but it just turns out that this fancy new microphone that I got works so well that it doesn't pick it up. So if I go like this, apparently you guys can't hear it. No? Okay.
No.
So thanks to Marcus for recommending I buy Joe Rogan's microphone. So we both have fancy mics now. It's so fancy it can't even pick up outside sound.
Well, that's why. That's why it's a voice directional mic.
It's amazing, hey? So when it gets to the 3-minute mark, I'm just going to go like this or like some signs to get you to stop. Or I might just mute you.
Shut up.
There you go. But Mike, I wonder if we can start with you. And I'm going to move your picture to the top here so I don't lose track of whose speaking turn it is. But have a little chat with us about your definition of homeopathy, because this kind of all came about because you feel that things are going a little bit too out of whack. So what would you say is your definition of homeopathy?
Well, it's like yours, like it's what's in the book. It's just sticking to the guidelines we've got in the books. It's really straightforward. It's a therapeutic system of medicine, and it's brilliant and it's simple. Essentially, it's simple. It's really simple and it's applicable and it's usable by people. It's used by, by missionaries going off for 3 weeks and used by people using arnica. And it's like, I think it's really that. It's the simplicity of it. It's not complicated. It's difficult to be simple, I know. But it is just like cures like. And there are other things, we can talk about law of cure or other bits and pieces that come into it. But it's a pretty straightforward framework. Why it ends up so convoluted and all over the place, well, I've got some ideas about that, but that's another matter. So, yeah, it's like cures like.
Okay, so, well, this is actually kind of good. We're going to go into the deeper stuff soon, but we'll kind of do a quick little definition just to get, the cogs rolling. Marcus, do you want to give us a definition?
Well, of homeopathy, yeah. I mean, it's really, I'm just going to sort of agree with Mike. I think I'm involved in homeopathy a long, long time. You come full circle and you do realize homeopathy is actually simple and it's adhering to that like cures like. I mean, that's the principle of homeopathy, isn't it? That's the main principle. And it's interesting often when I do home prescriber or home prescribing sort of webinars and courses, often you'll get homeopaths on these calls. And I always wonder why you're on these beginner courses. You say it's a webinar and you always say it's good to be reminded of the basics. And I think sometimes personally for me in my career, I've gone 30 odd years, I've gone full circle and come back to the basics again and not forgetting that the person standing in front of you is the most important thing. And so it is truly holistic, looking at people mentally, emotionally, as well as physically and individual. To me, homeopathy is individual. And I think, and I know a lot of homeopaths are saying this, and I totally agree, our time is coming because our time is here, because even the way that medicine goes, everything's going to individualization. And that's, to me, is homeopathy. It's individual and adhering to the like cures like principle.
And Hilery?
Okay, well, yeah. So far, I'm in broad agreement with Mike and Marcus. It's a system of medicine. And, it's a system of medicine that tends to get lumped with new age stuff, and one thing I'd like to say is that it isn't new age. It's over 200 years old. It was founded by a German doctor called Samuel Hahnemann, who was a doctor of his time, who just was looking for something better than leeches and bleeding to people to within an inch of their lives. And he founded the most amazing system of medicine, which every day blows me away when I'm in clinic. It's just amazing. And it's, as we've already heard, it's based on the idea that like cures like. And essentially what that actually means is that if somebody has an illness, we look at the symptoms of that illness. Let's say they've got food poisoning. So the remedy that we choose for them has to cover vomiting, diarrhea, perhaps weakness, perhaps chills, perhaps intense thirst, perhaps not. Maybe they're not thirsty. Maybe they feel better for eating. We have to find out what are their symptoms. So crucially, it involves information gathering. We have to gather information on the symptoms that the person is presenting, and we have to match them as carefully and as diligently as we can with what are called the provings of a substance. These are the symptoms that a healthy person has developed after taking a substance. So it's a very scientific approach, and it has to be quite exacting. And so it takes quite a lot of time to do that and a lot of care. So that's what like cures like means. But the way we apply like cures like can be quite painstaking, and yet at the same time it can be quite simple. Every time somebody uses arnica for a blow and a bruise, that's what the symptoms of the proving are. They're using arnica homeopathically because it's similar to the suffering. That's what homeopathy means, similar to the suffering. So homeopathy is somebody who uses a homeopathic remedy according to the principles laid down by Samuel Hahnemann. You can use a homeopathic remedy and you can give it to somebody, and it may not be homeopathic, because if it isn't similar to the suffering, it isn't homeopathic. It isn't homeopathic by virtue of the way it's been made. That's only part of the story. It's homeopathic by virtue of how it's prescribed in similarity with the suffering of the patient. So in a nutshell, that's my definition of what is homeopathy: a medicine chosen to match the symptoms of the sick person, taken with care and given to them, and then the effect carefully watched to see if it's doing what we want it to do.
Beautiful. And Sarah?
Well, so far I'm in cahoots with everybody else. We prescribe homeopathic remedies on the law of similars and the law of minimum dose, and we prescribe those on finding out through the case-taking process of what is the most important thing. And I think that's probably where there is a little bit of a bifurcation of the different factions, maybe is the word, for how we practice, because how we get there to establishing what is important in this case, what we perceive needs to be cured, we may reach through different routes. And I think that's probably a point these days where there is this point of difference. But about homeopathy, what is unique about homeopathy is that we take substances from the world around us, and we understand through homeopathic provings how those substances may be applied to the patients in front of us. So to me, that is completely unique, that we can really kind of harness the resonance of a substance. And of course, as the years have gone on, we are finding more and more provings and more substances that we can relate to our clients and to our people. But grounding all of that is the law of similars and the law of minimum dose. But to me, also, homeopathy tells a greater story about our evolution, about being human, about being in relationship with nature, with Mother Gaia as well. So, it's like a step beyond, being grounded in the law of similars and the law of minimum dose, but also expanding into the potential healing of everything around us.
That's cool. Danica, can you go next?
Thank you. Yeah, I resonate with and really sit alongside everything that everyone else has shared already. What I would add probably is the underneath it for me is there's a purpose. And what's the purpose of homeopathy? And for me, the purpose is for homeopathy to act as a catalyst to stimulate the vital force. Because when we have a strong vital force, then we are powerful. We're able to make great decisions in our lives. We're able to move forward. We're able to be healthy and well, mind, body, soul. And so for me, there's this piece around, Sarah used the word expand. We use remedies to enable people to expand into their wellness. And for me, expansion is a really big word at the moment. I think the reason we're here is because homeopathy is going through expansion, and expansion and growth isn't always comfortable. And that's reflective in a world that's going through expansion. And so for me, this conversation actually, it comes at a great time when we're looking at seeing actually what does it mean to work with an energy medicine that is a catalyst that stimulates the vital force, the inner life force, so that we can be strong, powerful, resourceful, and aligned.
I'm just so amazed by all of your definitions. It's so beautiful. Dion, can you go next?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, general definitions, agree with Mike, simple aspect, and of course, Hilery, similar suffering, Marcus, individuality, everything else that's said. I am going to say that as a Burnett geek, we have the simillimum, but we've got a stratification of similarity through a case. It's not just let's find the remedy that matches the totality of symptoms, because sometimes that fails, and sometimes we need to treat behind the symptoms. So now I'm talking about organ remedies, etiopathology, chronic disease states, acquired and inherited, iatrogenic disease. So sometimes our simillimum gets masked or covered up by what's inherited, acquired, or prescribed by an allopath. So it's not a simple equation of here's the patient's symptoms, let's find it in the repertory Materia Medica, give the remedy back. Many, many times it is, but there is a nuanced cases that are complex and hybrid that we do need to go to different levels of similarity to treat. And what I'm coming on to, I'll finish right now in a second. What I'm coming on to is this sharply delineates the difference between professional prescribers and home prescribers, where there's one concept of the law of similars, but in clinical practice, in full-time practice, there's now a whole huge vista of other things that rest upon Materia Medica knowledge, repertory, philosophy, anatomy, physiology, pathology, that is past the remit of somebody who just picks up a book and thinks, I'm a homeopath, I can give remedies to everyone. Yes, on a certain level, but there's a whole different level that you'd need to do a deep dive into.
All of the homeopaths, for anybody watching, you'll probably have to watch on Rumble because I've got a second strike on YouTube, so I can't upload anything until September. So this video will go on Rumble. But all of us are like nodding our heads in unison with what Dion has just said. And I'm so, so glad you brought that up. Thank you so much. Which also brings me nicely into the next point that I wanted us to discuss, and that is what is a homeopath? Because I have an incredible gripe at the moment. There seems to be all sorts of amounts of short courses out there these days that tell people they can call themselves homeopaths after like 4 or 6 months of, and there's people out there charging $900 after they've done a short course, 4 to 6 month course, and then they go on to charge $900 to prescribe fertility protocols and homeopathic immunization protocols and all these various protocols, and they call themselves homeopaths. And I am so scared for what this means for our profession. So let's just put it nice and straight right from the top. What is your definition of a homeopath? And maybe slide in there as well, what sort of qualification do you think somebody needs to be able to call themselves a homeopath? Mike, can we start with you?
We do. Crikey, that's a lot. I mean, we're going to end up going around in circles. It's like a homeopath is someone who practices homeopathy based on what everybody's saying. What point does it become not homeopathy? And I don't mean that necessarily critically. It's like where, what is geography, what is history? There are kind of lines. What's economics? We have to have some sort of boundaries around this stuff. And there are people, as you say, out there, whacking in all sorts of substances, so-called remedies that haven't really been proved properly, that I think slide by the profession. They're not really checked. What do they mean when they say they've done a proving? I would question that. And it needs to be questioned, because this stuff is just going into the circuit, as homeopathic remedies. Well, hang on, is it? And has it been proved? So there's all that stuff going on. And these people are as you say, calling themselves homeopaths. People whacking in 30, 40 remedies in one mix. It's like, is that homeopathy? So I think it's, to me, there ought to be a real integrity behind a homeopath. Someone who calls themselves there's an integrity there and an adherence to the sort of things people are talking about, that if it gets broken, we lose. And my concern is this: how it seems on the outside, how it appears, because some of it becomes utter nonsense. And as I said to you, Eugene, it's like, people are too scared to look at a brick in Tate Gallery and say, that's not fucking art. That's not art. Now, whether it is or not doesn't matter, but people are too scared to say it, that it isn't. They don't think it is. And that's the problem, is that homeopaths, even you're saying, we're all together, all lovely. Actually, there are some things I think that, no, I don't want to be all together with some of the stuff that's going on. I mean, I've talked to most people here on this panel, and we've all said, you look at the magazines and stuff that are so-called homeopathic, I have nothing to do with it. It's like, as Marcus said, I've been going 40 years. It's like I do not relate to the content of what's in those. There's something seriously wrong with, and these people that, articles written by homeopaths, for homeopaths, all swallowed up by students and stuff. And think, hang on, this is not to do with what they do or have done. What's wrong here? Is it me, or is it? Then I talk to people in the profession who say exactly the same thing. There's something wrong. There's a schism going on that I think we ought to sort out, because, like you say, you're worried about it. I'm worried about it, not enormously, because I think it'll go. It can be sorted, and it'll be. The truth always reveals itself. But even so, it is a concern, and that we're allowing stuff to happen, or allowing thinking, not allowing it, but having those thoughts accepted by students and so on without question is a problem for me, anyway.
Okay, and that's kind of going on to the next part, but I'm trying to kind of find a definition of what's a homeopath, just so we can kind of set the stage. So, if Marcus, if maybe you can give us like what you would say is your definition of a homeopath and what sort of qualification that they need, just so we can kind of set like a standard for that. I feel if we can just kind of lay a standard for a few things, and we can kind of build on that. But I know Mike's really wants to get into the nitty gritty. I want to as well, but I do feel it's good to kind of lay a bit of a foundation. So Marcus, for somebody to call themselves a homeopath, do you think that studying 4 to 6 months, you can call yourself a homeopath? Or what do you think should qualify somebody to be a homeopath?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I know Mike's chomping at the bit there to get into the nitty gritty, but yeah, what is a homeopath? Well, yeah, I mean, it's like what Dion's saying. There's a difference between home prescribing. There's a difference between what happens in practice, and I think I always say this when I do any open days for CHE. You become a homeopath. It's a process. It's a becoming. It's not just learning facts and then off you go. It's a perspective around health and well-being, and for that, you have to have those fundamental pillars of learning those basics, the philosophy, the anatomy and physiology, the clinical skills in casework, the materia medica, and that builds. And then you have to have supervised clinical training, from others who are much more experienced at practice. Because homeopathy is not just about giving a remedy. It's about what happens next. And that's in acute, but also more importantly in chronic. And it's having those tools at your disposal. And for me, as a homeopath, you need to know not as one way of prescribing. I always say one spanner doesn't fit all nuts. You need tools in the toolbox. So whoever walks through your door, you've got a tool in the toolbox in order to help them. And to me, that makes sense. Just doing one way of practicing homeopathy, whatever it is, whether it's classical, whether it's this, whether it's practical, whatever it is, that's irrelevant. That should be neutral. It's about the person that's sat in front of you and what do they need at that time. So I think that's what I think homeopaths should have as well. And I think that's not in 6 months. That's not in 3 months. To me, that takes like what we offer 4 years part-time or 2 years fast track. it is a process that you do to think and see and perceive. And I think it was you, Sarah, said about the perception of what needs to be cured, and that comes from clinical work, that comes from practice, that comes from being supervised, being mentored in that process, a bit like an apprenticeship. Is so crucial. The stuff that you can't get just from reading the books. You need it to be brought alive and in reality. So yeah, and I think the perception then out there of what is a homeopath can get very muddied. I think most people are quite switched on. They know that if somebody's just done a 4-month course, they're not really a homeopath. I don't know people, but maybe they don't. I'm not sure. But I think it's as a profession that we need to set those scenes. The other thing I want to just mention is I think there's a bit of an identity crisis about what is a homeopath, because our background came from medicine, the doctor homeopath. So it's like, are we clinicians? Are we therapists? What are we? I mean, I think that's another interesting debate to have, as maybe both of those, maybe people see one more than the other. But I think that's an interesting debate as well to have about who are we? Who are we?
Great point. Hilery, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. What is a homeopath? Because somebody who uses homeopathy, they've got a good first aid kit. They give their kids homeopathy, arnica when they fall, or bryonia when they've got a cough. They're not homeopaths. They're users of homeopathy and occasional acute prescribers. And somebody who's done even a 4-year course in homeopathy, they're not necessarily homeopaths. I know a lot of people who've done a 4-year course in homeopaths and have gone back to their work in government or wherever they came from in the first place. So even doing a 4-year course doesn't make you a homeopath. I think that being a homeopath is actually a bit of a calling. The people who want to do it, who do the course, and the people who've done the course and make it into practice, because it isn't an easy thing to do, are the ones. They have a calling. They know they're going to do this. They want to make people better. They have a kind of calling to heal, and they will practice. So it's those people. It's like, is somebody a doctor just because they got their BSc? No, they may have gone into working for a drug company. They're not necessarily in the healing profession. They're not a doctor. It's what we do once we've graduated. We can be a qualified homeopath without actually being a homeopath. For me, being a homeopath is seeing patients on a regular basis and prescribing for them in a way that is likely to encourage well-being in that patient. So I don't think it's just being qualified. And it's interesting, how long does it take to become a homeopath? Some people, I think, just are not ever going to be homeopaths and probably know that themselves as they go along. And other people, it's almost that they're going to fly and be brilliant. And so it's really hard to define what is a homeopath. Simply put, it's somebody who is using homeopathic remedies according to the laws laid down by Hahnemann to make people well. But it is a slightly bigger thing than that. For me, there is definitely something more to it, that people are driven to do this. I don't really like legislation, laying down of legislation that you have to do this much learning, you have to do it in this college, this has to be the curriculum, because I think it's a bit stifling. But there may have to be some, there has to be some adherence to the underlying principles. Otherwise, we can't call it homeopathy.
Mm. And Sarah?
I really, that point you made, Hilery, about the calling, because I know when I did my bachelor degree in homeopathy, I think I graduated with 11 people and I am the last man standing. And, I often think about that and think about, like, why am I the last man standing? But I know that I could not be a homeopath. Like, I couldn't not do this. Like, this is something that it just lives through me and that I understand the world through. So, my studies were long, but having taught other students as well, like, I can see that they get it. Like, they get it in a period of time that maybe only 2 years. You know, my course was 6 years. I did 6 years of study, and you know, to integrate all of that information was, you know, I mean, that's lifelong, isn't it? That's still happening. You know, personally, it's always happening. That's the wonderful thing about homeopathy. But you know, I think I do think there is that kind of place of you know, knowing the calling and going there and doing it and helping people by prescribing remedies according to the law of similars. But I also think that as a homeopath, we have to understand how we get to understand a case. And I think we all have different ways of doing that. But what's the most important thing is that we get there, that we understand what simillimum is, that we understand how to support the person in front of us, whether that's through, you know, organ support or clearing pharmaceutical interventions and all of that kind of thing. And personally, in my experience working with complex children, you know, I've had to grow and think outside of just my classical training, because these kids weren't just getting better on that simillimum only. And that is also the wonderful thing about being a homeopath, is that there is so much scope for the way that we prescribe the remedies, for the way that we perceive what is to be cured. You know, right now in this person, what is it that needs to be cured? And when I was reading back through the questions that you'd posed today and that thing about what is it to be a homeopath, I really thought about that. And is it like somebody who's a naturopath who's done, because in Australia we have that. There's an extensive amount of naturopaths who do 3 months of homeopathy training, and then they call themselves a homeopath, and then they prescribe the remedies, but they often don't help anybody with the remedies, because they don't really understand what it is to know the vital force, to know the law of similars. It's almost like prescribing a flower essence in a way. And in fact, my final thesis in my bachelor course was about what do other modalities know about homeopathy, and the results were startling, because a lot of them were like, oh, they're kind of like flower essences, or they're this or that. And these were these students who'd done 3 months of homeopathy. So I do feel like that, you know, there is a growing alongside. There is a journey that we go on as a homeopath as well, you know, and even still, you know, I'm taking remedies and seeing the way other people prescribe, and when it works, like, you know, how amazing is it when it works? And so, you know, my mind is like constantly blown at how we can use these substances that we capture through the homeopathic process of dilution and succussion, and we can heal people. It's just constantly amazing and astounding and interesting. But the breadth and depth of homeopathy is something that I feel like we have to keep growing with. So just coming out of a 3-month course, going back to your point originally, that's a very short time to really understand the breadth and the depth of what this system of medicine is.
Vanessa?
No, I'm really in support of what's been said so far. All of that completely resonates with me. And I do have that concern as well. You know, when someone comes away with having spent 3 months or maybe 6 months studying, like Marcus was talking about, it's so important to have the supervised clinical training to really go in depth with practicing what it means to be a homeopath and to be supervised in doing so. Becoming a homeopath is a journey. You can't just take it like a book off the shelf and read a book and then just be able to practice. We do need to be able to really embody that learning. We need to be able to interpret that learning. We need to be able to see what happens when we apply that learning in practice. And so it was interesting that Hilery talked about legislation, and I feel the same about legislation, very much so. And maybe that word legislation is quite strong, but maybe there is scope for there to be some guidelines around what adequate or good training looks like, so that people do know that. For me, in addition to what everyone else has said, what I would add is that being a homeopath is a way of life. You don't just do a course and then that's it. It's a completely different way of thinking to how we've been conditioned to think and how we've been brought up to think in the world that we find ourselves in. And it's a very freeing way to think. It's a very empowering way to think, but it is a way of life. And I don't know how others feel who are here, but I'm fascinated by how I look at people. And I came out of a psychology background, and I'm fascinated by how my thinking as a homeopath has shifted. The analysis, that it's like being a detective. That's what I say to people who don't understand what it means to practice as a homeopath. I'm like, it's like being a detective. You're literally trying to listen, to see, to feel, to find everything that there needs to be understood about a person. And we do that in psychology, but actually, when we work as homeopaths, we are not just working with what the mind and the behavior are showing. We are working with literally every part of how a person presents. The words, not just the words they say, but how their body shows up, what's physically going on for them, what's going on in their whole life. It's a whole picture. It's an art as well as a science. We're looking at the picture of a person. So that piece around it being a way of life, we never stop growing as homeopaths. Homeopathy isn't something where we finish a qualification and that's it, we're practicing. I think true homeopaths never stop. We never stop growing and learning. I talk about how we go to bed with, I've got some of our huge materia medicas here on the table, and I joke about how we go to bed reading our textbooks, not because we need help to go to sleep, as would happen in probably many other professions if you went to bed with a textbook, but because we've spent the day noticing something, thinking about maybe a person we've seen or a situation we've seen, and wondered what remedies might really support them. So we go to bed and we reflect on those situations and we read our materia medicas. And the journey of going deeply into the remedies doesn't stop ever. And that it was re-illustrated to me by a homeopath who I adore, that I worked with in one of the pharmacies, who to me probably represented somebody who understood the materia medicas more than anybody I'd come across, and had been in practice for 40 years. And I remember walking past her one day and she was sitting at her desk and she was reading about arnica. And it was a real moment of revelation for me, because I was like, wow, if this incredible homeopath who knows the materia medica probably better than anyone I've ever met is sitting there and reading arnica after 40 years of practice, we never stop learning, and we mustn't ever stop going back over what we started with at the beginning. Marcus talked about that, kind of coming back to the beginning, that full circle. We're always coming back, that being, never assuming we know it all, never assuming we know it enough. Always being open to continuing to expand. That for me, I think, is my buzzword at the moment, is expansion. And that for me is what living as a homeopath, what being a homeopath is all about. It's about being open to expansion all the time.
Yeah, I think that's true. I like the point that Sarah made about other practitioners, the naturopaths who've done a few months in homeopathy, or osteopaths who've not done anything, but they still will give out. I often have patients come in and say, oh, my osteopath gave me this. I'll say, oh, your osteopath's a homeopath. Oh, no, but I think they give, sometimes give us remedies, and it's a bit, it annoys me. My first instinct is, it annoys me. He's not a homeopath. He hasn't taken your case homeopathically. But then the second part of me thinks about it. So as a homeopath, most of us are not going to say, oh, I'll just give your neck a little manipulation while you're here, because we might break their neck. We don't know what we're doing and it's not safe. We don't say, I'll give you a bit of some insulin, I'm not a doctor, but because we could kill them. And even with acupuncture, we're not going to start sticking needles in case we puncture their lung or give them hepatitis from an unsterilized needle. So the reason that this happens, and the beauty of homeopathy, is that essentially it's a very, very safe form of medicine. And we know as homeopaths that if somebody has been prescribed for badly for a long time, it does do damage. It complicates the case. It makes it harder to set them right. But the odd remedy here given, it probably isn't going to actually harm. And I have actually had a few patients who said, well, my first experience of homeopathy was the girl who did my facial even, said to me, why don't you try this for, and it really worked. So that made me think, I want to go and see a homeopath. So it's an odd thing, isn't it? That all these untrained people, they're not homeopaths, but they're using homeopathy, sometimes successfully, like home homeopaths do. And it makes us really riled up. But on another level, maybe they're actually helping homeopathy, promoting homeopathy in the world, as long as it doesn't go too far, as long as it is just an acute prescription, and they will say, look, I'm not a homeopath, give it a try. And if the person feels, that did something, I think they themselves are then motivated to look for a homeopath. So the irritation is there, but sometimes it gets replaced with me by, maybe it's a good thing.
But sorry, can I just jump in there? I agree, Hilery, but I think there's a different. If we can differentiate between an osteopath suggesting some Rustox or Bryonia for somebody that has an issue, and then somebody actually after 4 months then saying they're a homeopath. I think there's a slight, and I think it spreads homeopathy. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So I like Danica's detective analogy. I often use that one myself for sure. And to become a detective requires training. To practice homeopathy requires training. Now I'm going to give specifics. I think that to qualify and go into clinical practice as a homeopath, you've got to do somewhere in the region of 3 to 5 years study, where you're studying anatomy, physiology, pathology, disease, materia medica, repertory, philosophy, patient management. You can't do that in 3 months or 6 months. It's got to be a number of years. So it has to be around the 3 to 5 year mark. And I don't run colleges. I work at colleges. So I'm just giving my opinion, and this can be manifested in different ways now. But even when you've done that time, when you've done your basic training, it's like training as a gardener. You might do 2-3 years training as a gardener, then you're ready to go and work. Yeah. Then when you've done 10 seasons in gardens, you now know how to do proper horticulture. Yeah. Same with homeopathy. You might qualify after 3 to 5 years, but then once you've done 5 to 10 years clinical practice, now you're a seasoned homeopath. Yeah. Because who teaches us best of all? Our patients, but you need the foundation, you need the bedrock to do that, to learn from that. So I think, nothing less than a number of years training to call yourself a homeopath is the standard that I would set in sort of a black and white specific way. Anything like 3 to 6 months, forget it. That's a home prescriber. That's me. Jump in, Marcus. I know you're waiting.
I'm sorry, I was about to, Danica, what you're saying, which I agree with, about this thing about you can look at the journey never ends. It goes on and it goes on and goes on. I said, I can look at pulsatilla and see a different part of pulsatilla I've never seen before, even though I've probably looked at it 1,000 times because of the person sat in front of me. So I think there's no end point, is there? I think it's really important, personally, as homeopaths, that they are in a continuous self-reflection process. Because to me, you can only take people as far as you're at. You can't take them any further. And so I think that needs to be embedded much more within the homeopathic profession around health, well-being, vitality, because this is what we are. We're supposed to be health practitioners, but we've also got to walk the talk as well. I just wanted to throw that one in.
Love that. Mike, this is your chance. So what are some of the things happening in the homeopathy world right now that you have concerns about, or that you're very excited about? So this is where you get to just unleash about some of the things that you feel is happening in the homeopathy world right now that you don't agree with. Or for any of you that might agree with everything that's happening right now, maybe you want to focus more on the things that you're really excited about in the homeopathy world.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of me agreeing or disagreeing. And I don't have, it sounds like some sort of Enoch Powell homeopathic rant or something, but which maybe it is. But no, it's not about that. It's about discussing this stuff. The fact that stuff doesn't get discussed, as I said earlier.
So when you say stuff, what sort of stuff do you mean?
I think so around the proofs, or what we're doing, what we're talking about today. Defining things more clearly, so we're clear about what we're doing, and clear about what a homeopath is. Is it, as you say, an osteopath? Is it? It's just about provings. Like I say, the content of some of the journals just seems to me
her
So
behavior.
is it to do more with like you talked about proving specifically? So is it more is your gripe more to do with some of the remedies that are out there that you feel are not being proved correctly, or is
Yeah,
it
I think
something
what
else
people think.
specifically?
Yeah, I think that's partly part of it. It's not the only thing by me proving, but it's and the thinking that's going behind some of what I read in journals and so on about what is homeopathy. So I think it's the lack of what seems to me to be a critical appraisal of what homeopathy actually is and where we draw the line at it, which is what we're doing now. So I'm not really, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I don't have particular opinions in a funny sort of way. I mean, I know I've seen practitioners, I think have great integrity and so on, but I wouldn't get what they're talking about, or I wouldn't necessarily relate it to homeopathy. So it's really, it's more open-ended than that.
Okay, so there's, when you say about the journals, is there anything specifically, like any specific examples that you want to give of things that you've recently seen in journals that you feel you don't relate to?
I don't really read them now. I just don't read them.
Well, the reason that when you stopped reading, before you stopped reading.
I mean, if you want specific things, it's like, some of the sort of so-called meditative provings, and you read them and think it's not approving. I've been doing it long enough to know what reads like approving and what stands out as approving. And these we're talking about things that are given willy-nilly in pharmacies by pharmacists and homeopaths, and you just think it's not approving. It's not. It's like a judgment. It's an ego thing. Where remedies are good. Oh, they unite the feminine with the masculine and stuff. And how many? Taking a couple of, like you say, somebody's looking at arnica who's still trying to get a sense of arnica or pulsatilla, and there's somebody whacked out, probably done a 3-month course in something with some mad remedy that unites the masculine and feminine. You think, what's that based on? And this gets into the thinking. This gets into people applying this to patients, and as I always say to the students, like, we're not doing Egyptian archaeology or anything. Consequences aren't too serious, but we're dealing at the end of all this stuff with a patient who's ill, and that's what bothers me. So I don't have any particular, but I think it needs to be discussed.
I'm just jumping in for my own curiosity here. I'm being a bit naughty and jumping in because I'm just trying to differentiate. So with like Jan Scholten's work that he did with the minerals, like most of those remedies have never been proven either. So when you say that they don't have provings, is there more about the way, like, is it the meditative provings itself that you think are not kind of maybe part of homeopathy, or that shouldn't be done? Or is it like, what is it specifically about?
No, I don't think anything shouldn't be done. It's not shouldn't be done. It's just questioning what do we consider a proving? I don't think it's just meditative provings either. I think some of the other provings I would be very suspicious, because I know they're given and on the basis that they worked and, didn't work. So it's more than that. It goes deeper than that. It's like actually people saying what a remedy is and what it does, and actually it hasn't done it, because I've known the patient they're talking about. Do you know what I mean? It's stuff like that. It's a very sort of, so it's not just meditative provings. It's just about the integrity of homeopathy, really. What's underlying the prescription, the reason for it needs to be really clear. That's all.
Sarah, you said you want to pipe in?
So I just wanted to comment on that because, I have certainly used remedies that have been proved meditatively and in other ways. And one of the things about research is that we can have reproducible results and that we can see those results. And I have successfully prescribed remedies that have been proven, there's a meditation proving or a trituration proving, which is almost like a channeling of the substance. And so, I think that despite really also feeling very, very sure that we need to have strong guidelines without interference from, somebody's imagination, for example, I'm also kind of encouraged when I have had, when these results have been reproducible, which I've personally seen in my practice. And there's been some surprising, it's not surprising anymore. It doesn't surprise me at all anymore, because it's like if I can really understand the resonance of a substance that's made into a remedy, then I can understand that maybe it is through a meditation proving and that I can prescribe it successfully for a patient, then for me, then that's kind of enough of the proof that it's, been understood. I also feel like having done a number of trituration provings and been involved in a number of these types of provings myself, that I have, and this is possibly the way I work, and I think that's one of the things about being a homeopath too, that we all have to acknowledge how we work and how we get to the simillimum, is that I really can deeply understand the remedy when I've been involved in a proving, whether it's Hahnemannian, whether it's meditation, whether it's trituration. And then I can really kind of get a sense of, when the person sits in front of me, that's the same resonance as what has come through in that proving.
Mm. So we're just going to go around the room and give everyone their sort of 3 to 4 minutes. I haven't been accurately timing it because I don't want to stop anyone. Your stuff's so good. So we'll go around the room and then we're going to have some free flow chat and we can get into all the nitty gritty. But Marcus, can you go next for us?
What was the question? Sorry.
The question. I just copied it in the notes. That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
But
okay.
what are some of the
homeopathy?
That's okay. Some of the things that is happening that you have concerns about or that you're excited about?
I'm always excited, but I think we should always be pushing the boundaries of homeopathy. I think, Hahnemann was live today. He'd be doing the same thing. I think it's important not to get stuck in old traditions and not looking at new things or different things or expanding, as we talked about expanding today, expanding homeopathy. That's what this conference is about in Bali, unleashing homeopathy. I think I remember when I trained, there was a lot of dogma, especially a lot of dogma in homeopathy. And I went to a school, the late great Robert Davison, who was the opposite to that. And so I've always felt a bit like always on the outside. I remember going to tutorials when I was a student, and because I went to the practical college, they wouldn't speak to me. And I was only like 21 and they'd ignore me. They were very classical and very, very, to me, stuck in their ways. So I feel that I'm glad actually a lot of the dogma seems to have shifted a lot over the last, number of years. But I still go back to that same point that, to me, we need tools in the toolbox. And on CHE, we're a very broad church. We have a lot of different teachers. People have different opinions. But I think there's respect amongst each other of the way that they see homeopathy. And to me, if it works, I want to know. Because then I can help my patients and my clients, and I will suspend what my beliefs are. If it works, then I will try it and I will use it. So I think we need to be a lot more open in our thinking. And listen, in anything like that, there's always going to be extremes of opinions, but that's good. As Mike said, it's good to debate these things. We need to talk about them, debate them, meet people who practice differently than we practice, because at the end of the day, we've got to still, be committed as a community. And what I'm excited about is lots of things, how homeopathy is now flourishing around the world. We all know that, how it's changed since the pandemic. I'm excited about technology that's coming in, and I'm embracing that, how we can embrace technology coming in and new ideas around homeopathy. So I'm excited about it. And I think we should always have open debate. But I agree with Mike. I mean, I've got to admit, I don't read the journals. I don't particularly resonate with that. And I think the thing, what concerns me, if anything concerns me, is people speaking from no experience and just pontificating things and the sort of guru stuff that can go on. That always worries me. But I think those sort of days I think those days are numbered around that. But I think it should always come from experience. And I think, when we ever teach anything or ever speak about things, we can have philosophy, great. But when you're teaching it as this is a new way of doing homeopathy or this is the new method, it should be coming from experience. I think that's my opinion.
Love it. Hilery, do you want to go next?
Okay. I mean, I agree with Marcus. I think experience is really important. It's important in our lives as homeopaths, from seeing lots and lots of cases and seeing what remedies, what strategies, what works for what kind of people. Experience in anything is something that you can't buy. Do I have any concerns? I don't have many concerns, but occasionally it's more about, sometimes if people ask me how I work, are you a classical homeopath? And I say, well, it's hard to define. I'm always looking for the simillimum. I'm always looking based mainly on the mentals, the generals, and some of the physicals, I'm always looking for the simillimum, which is a fairly classical approach. But I'm not hidebound by giving one remedy. Like Dion, I might be looking at small remedies that are addressing some of the physical organ drainage. I'm also going to be looking at the miasmatic level. So I have no problem in giving more than one remedy at a time in a patient. So I think that homeopathy is moving in an exciting direction, and my concerns are smaller than my delight in it. I love new remedies. I think when we look back to the world that Kent lived in, to the world we live in now, we have vaccines, antibiotics, electromagnetic frequencies, petrochemicals, more food additives, glycophosphate, it's awful. So the simple tools are not really going to work anymore, and we have to move a bit with the times. And meditating provings, it's like being stuck in the digital age and can't move into analog, listening to LPs when you could be just using an MP3. We have to move with the times. So I'm up for most of it, but I do like things to be grounded. And so if there's a meditative proving, I'm not against a meditative proving. I would like it, if possible, also to have a traditional proving, if that's possible too. But even meditative provings, they end up with a clinical proving. And I find that the meditative provings that I use, the remedies that have meditative provings that I use most are ones that have been around for a while, and they also have a clinical picture that people are using that I can grasp hold of. Like Mike, I can't bear, maybe being a grounded person, the airy-fairiness of some of the stuff that's out there, and some of the language of the meditative provings. I also, like Mike, it drives me crazy. I look at some of the books, and one of them talk of a remedy, and they say, must only be used by workers of the light. And I'm like, oh, can I use that? I don't know. Or maybe I shouldn't use that. Maybe that doesn't apply to me. And so many of the remedies, they take you from the darkness into the light. I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? None of my patients come in and say, Hilery, I'm in the dark. Can you put the light on? It's meaningless and twaddle, and it annoys me, and I don't like that airy-fairiness. You read some of these provings and I think, well, I have absolutely no idea what's going to help in a patient, so it needs to be grounded. I'm all for new remedies. I'm open to meditative provings. The other thing that concerns me is the huge rise in using drugs as remedies. Now, I see students quite often, I supervise students and they say, I've given him Valium 30. And I'll say, so why did you give Valium 30? Well, he's on Valium and he wants to come off. So I thought we'd replace it with homeopathic Valium and he could use that instead. So there we have a patient using the homeopathic Valium as if it's actual Valium. And then later on, I might have a student who says to me, so my patients come off Valium and I want to help them not have any side effects and get it out of their system more quickly. So I've given them Valium back in potency. So we have two patients using the same remedy for one thinking that it's actually going to have the energy of Valium and it will keep the Valium going in his system, and one who thinks it's going to clear it out. So if we're prescribing medical drugs in potency that have no provings, what are we doing? How do we have clarity on what we're doing? So, yeah, there are a few things that concern me, not as many as things that excite me, but I do like things to be grounded. And that's sometimes my concern. I think people are just grabbing at things and there isn't a real knowledge behind what they're doing. There isn't a kind of they haven't got a pathway. They can't. I like to think we've got to see a patient, you see a bit of a pathway with them. That's not to say you don't deviate from that pathway. Sometimes there's a bend comes up in the road. Sometimes there's a deer path that you follow instead, but you have an idea of where you're going. And sometimes I think people don't have any idea where they're going. And it seems that occasionally people looking for a quick fix. It's the detective work is too much for them. So what can I do that's just straight in my face? So that slight lack of care, that ungroundedness and that airy-fairiness is my concern. But at the same time, I'm very excited by a lot of the developments. And I do think we need to move with the times, because the world moves, the energy moves, homeopathy has to move. And as homeopaths, we have to move with it.
Yeah, I agree. Can I say something?
Sure.
Sorry, no, I agree. And I'm not saying it's like interesting. It's like, oh, I'm against meditative provings. I'm against some meditative provings because they're crap. They just doesn't make sense. And it becomes a sort of ego moral, like a moral thing. You know, I remember reading one about which said, I was just furious. It's like this, you know, it was a meditative proving talking. It said about the situation in Yugoslavia, was saying, you know, the bloodletting needed to happen. That this was part of, and I just thought it's extraordinary. It's like a moral, you know, thing being brought into a proving, a homeopathic proving. As I say, it's like, so that's where it gets wrong. I mean, you can just smell ego. That's what the problem is. It's ego, as you say. And there are people at the end of all this. You know, I've been at, you know, worked in a pharmacy and watched people prescribing on the phone. You just think, what? You know, you've got a little baby who's in an incubator and you're giving pink in potency. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be pink, but it's like the thinking behind it. I mean, I'm sorry, I was just interrupting to say, you know, about, you know, a book in which a nameless homeopath who shall remain nameless, you know, the reviews in the book are, you know,
what am I going to say?
Do you know what I'm going to say, Marcus? It's like, you know, this book is one of the best books I've ever read. Buddha. I'm not kidding you, Hilery. I'm not kidding you. This is actually a book that students were buying and showing me. You know, this book got a little bit weak towards the end, but, you know, need a car chase. Jesus Christ. I mean, I'm making those bits up. But seriously, Beethoven reviewed the book. You think this is somebody who's a homeopath, apparently, putting this stuff out. That's what bothers me, because it's nuts. Yeah. And if we don't say it's nuts, who's going to say it's nuts? It's just going to, all the students, you know, you can give students anything. I've done it. I've given them fake meditative provings on remedies, and they've all swallowed it whole, you know, and it wasn't anything of what I was saying. I was just testing gullibility. So, sorry, I was just going to say about the Buddha quote. It still gets me that, you know. I might write a book and get a few good names to say they've reviewed it or something.
Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yes. Gosh, I feel like I'm collecting all of the things that I want to say. Okay, my concerns. And I have to say, you know, also supervising students, and for example, you know, sometimes a little bit of information can be incredibly dangerous. For example, Jill Turlin's work on megapotencies. And I think any student or even practitioner who maybe tries to follow a protocol or latches on to something that somebody who's written a book says can be incredibly dangerous. And I feel like this comes back to finding our way of perceiving what is to be cured and prescribing according to the law of similars, because that information, I think, can come to us in different ways. But when students really try to mimic, so suddenly everybody's got you know, ancestral trauma, for example, and I'm seeing this in a lot of the students that
it's a new buzzword at the moment for
suddenly
sure.
Everyone's got, which we all do. Okay, but is that what needs to be addressed right now?
What needs to be cured? Yeah.
Is that what needs to be cured here? No. But there's this ancestral trauma, and then there's these people being thrown megapotencies to wipe it out. And I've seen like some pretty astounding things. That does concern me. Protocols also concern me. That somebody, I feel like a practitioner mustn't know enough about finding the simillimum and prescribing what needs to be given to this patient at this point in time if they just listen to a teacher and they follow a protocol. We're going to miss the whole art of what we do, which grows in us, you know, as we develop and grow as practitioners. I find that concerning. I find it very concerning, again, that people would do a 3-month course and somehow feel like they have permission to call themselves a homeopath, because I've also seen here in Australia, we had a decline from when I did a degree course down to a 2-year course. And I've worked with and supervised a number of people who did that 2-year course in homeopathy and found that they actually really didn't understand homeopathy, but they were homeopaths. And they were qualified, but they really didn't, they didn't understand pathophysiology. They didn't understand what's the second prescription and how do you find it? How do you get there? Understanding how do you follow the energy of the vital force? That does take time, as we've all discussed, and that does concern me, because it obviously, it maybe then it leads to these people then prescribing these mega potencies because someone's got ancestral trauma. So that all of that does concern me. I also see this huge rise in using social media platforms and all of that kind of thing, which I think is wonderful because the awareness of homeopathy, I think, is growing because of those means. And this is like, it's a little bit of a concern, and it's also a little bit like, well, it's quite wonderful that homeopathy seems to be having its a resurge in many ways of popularity. That's wonderful. Again, the flip side of that is the concerning part of people kind of following these protocols and, getting really excited. I think there's this whole cohort of people on social media who also think that homeopathy is this really glamorous thing or this real wellness thing. And I don't know. I don't. I mean, for me, that's the authenticity of it isn't that. It is far more intricate, and it's far more, to be able to sit with a patient and really understand what needs to be cured is not any of those things. And so, but that is also a comment on the trajectory of our modern world, isn't it? It's like, where information is like this. Oh, I'm a homeopath now, like 20 minutes later, I'm a homeopath now, and I will give all these remedies and I'm really excited about it. This is kind of like the nature of our world too. And I'm not particularly supportive of that, because it does, you have to kind of go through your strides to really navigate this system of medicine, I think.
So well said. Danette, so would you like to go next?
Thank you. Yeah, I like everything that Sarah said with bells on, amazing, and so much of what others have said too. One of the things that really interests me about where homeopathy is moving is that homeopathy has very much it started in the sphere of the body in the times of Dr. Hahnemann, and the work was very much in relation to our physical health. And over time, it's moved into the mind. And the part that I'm really excited about is how we also bring in the work on a soul level and bringing homeopathy into a place where we're looking at literally that holistic piece around mind, body, soul. I completely understand what Hilery said about some of the airy-fairy stuff, the darkness into light. I completely understand where I get that. And at the same time as that, I do understand that language. I do understand that, to me, that's an expression of working at a soul level. And I've had the joy of working kind of in very much in that kind of physical grounded space, and also the joy and at times challenge of working in that kind of soul space way. And it's for me, I'm excited about seeing how homeopathy is now expanding into a space where all of that's coming together. But I do understand and see how that can seem unusual to people. And we're in, as I said earlier, we're in a time of growth and expansion, and that's not always comfortable. Mike used the word integrity, and it's really interesting talking about meditative provings, because some of you will know that I'm very lucky to have to be working with the most amazing homeopaths from around the world in the Golden Spiral Provings Collective. And Eugenie and Sarah are part of that. And there are so many others from around the world too, Dr. Angelica Lemke, Daniel Berge, and so many. And we for me, there's a piece around when looking at what a group is bringing through in terms of new remedies and provings. Who are they? Who are those people? What's their purpose? Why are they doing this? I had a really interesting conversation with one of the pharmacy leaders in the world of pharmacy and homeopathy. And we were having a conversation where, there was a question around, but how do we know the quality of what comes through? And that's really important. We must make sure that we ensure that whatever we do is at the highest quality we can possibly produce. And that to me is linked to integrity. And that's about the people that are involved. And looking at, what one of the points in that conversation was, but some people might just do this work for the money. And I laughed. I was like, if you knew how I think we might be the only profession in the whole world, is my joke, where we don't pay our researchers. When you do that kind of work, it's research and it's unpaid and it takes a huge amount of time and love, actually, more than anything. It's a calling. We've been talking about it's a calling. It's a calling. So for me, integrity is really important, but that does still apply when we're talking about meditative proving. So I do completely agree with what you said about bloodletting in Yugoslavia. I mean, I'm Serbian. I came from, so I really felt when you said that, Mike, there are certain things that I've never heard when I've taken part in provings, phrases that would make me wince in a way that just did. But there's a piece there, again, it's around integrity. It's around what space we're holding. Are we doing this because we're in service? And that's ultimately what this work is about. It's about being in service to humanity. Whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a prover, whatever it is that you're doing, are you coming at this from a place of service? And just as a point on the provings, it's really interesting looking at there being these meditative provings and then differentiating between meditative and Hahnemannian provings. One of the things that's fascinated me that we've seen in our provings group is that I just thought we'd be doing meditative provings that happen when we're together on a live session. But what we've realized is actually happening is that as soon as a remedy is ready, it has a consciousness. And so what happens is that people in the provings group go into the proving sometimes weeks before we have our live session together. And it takes weeks to arrange because remedies are being sent to people from literally across the world. So we have to plan these provings weeks and weeks in advance. But it's incredible. I get messages literally from the moment these remedies are finished, before they've even made it to the post office. I get remedies from people in the group going, okay, this really weird thing's happening. Is this going to be to do with the proving? And more often than not, in fact, probably almost every single time I've gone, just make a note of everything now that happens. And that's actually, had they physically taken a remedy, we would then have called that a Hahnemannian proving. It's just that they haven't physically taken it because they haven't physically received it. But the consciousness of the remedy is live. So that to me is another example of how we're expanding. And so re-looking at, redefining, questioning, debating, having these explorations that are around, well, what does it mean now in terms of how we practice? This is all really great. This to me is wonderful. Things that I love, the fact that we are coming together in the world. I do have concerns around these really short courses. We were talking about the naturopaths and the 3 months, and that not having that really kind of embedded clinical practice. I think that's crucial. Supervised clinical practice, I think, is absolutely crucial, and over a period of time. And like everyone's been saying, it takes time. You don't wake up like a homeopath just because you've got a certificate. It's a journey. But what do I love? I love the fact that, because of IT, because of social media, because of the internet, we've got people coming together from around the world like we are right now. And our provings group is literally from people all around the world connecting at the same time. I mean, I just find all of that amazing and incredible. The reach, the incredible work that people like you, Eugenie, and Lisa in the UK, and just so many people around the world are just like sharing and talking. It's that we're really taking homeopathy out there. And I think, Eugenie, we all can really applaud you for being absolutely at the forefront of that. I think you're incredible, and the work that you do is phenomenal, spreading the word and the message of homeopathy. So thank goodness for IT for that. And one of the things that I also feel really excited about is the difference I'm seeing in people. When and I'm sure all of us will relate to this, I used to say I'm a homeopath, and then would watch certain people wince. And and then turn away or look at me like I was slightly mental. And now I in almost every single case watch someone step forward and go, even if they don't know, and they go, well, tell me about it. What's that about? And even with people who are die-hard skeptics at the moment, I'm having the best conversations because I can link homeopathy to quantum physics, to the atom, to energy. And it's amazing to be able to meet people where they're at now, because we've been able to expand how we talk about homeopathy in so many ways. And one last point was the way I'm seeing medical professionals opening to homeopathy. That's where I think I feel most excited, because every single conversation since COVID I've had with a doctor or a medical professional where I've said I'm a homeopath, they have leaned into that conversation in the most positive ways. And that to me is a real sign of hope in terms of the openness that there is to now starting to think about medicine in a really integrated way. We're moving into that space. So there's room for us on that table as homeopaths, I think.
It's so beautiful, Danica. Dion, do you want to share your bits?
Certainly. Okay, let's start with a Burnett quote here.
Of course.
He wrote in 50 Reasons for Being a Homeopath that the biggest detractors to homeopathy are its weak-need supporters. So when we get provings of, the bloodletting needs to happen, reviews from Buddha, Jesus, and Beethoven, and moving from the dark to the light, it does detract from what we do. And I think the center of what we're talking about today, be it the training, being it in practice and calling yourself a homeopath, or doing provings, the center of what we're talking about is integrity and quality control. Yeah. And you had John from Helios on your podcast, and I listened to it and I really liked that episode. And he said, if I remember correctly, that to introduce a new remedy and for it to get established in the literature, Repertory Materia Medica, and used globally around the world, he estimated a decade, 10 years. Yeah. So if we introduce a new remedy and we have personal, anecdotal, clinical experience of it, that's only the first step. That needs to be replicated in clinics all over the world, because all the new remedies, as useful as they may seem now, will we still be talking about them in 3-5 years' time? Will they be in rubrics in the repertory in 10 years' time? And only time will tell. We can debate as much as we want, but only time will tell. But, you ask any homeopath, choose 100 remedies, that's all you're going to have. It's going to be sulfur, medarinum, tuberculinum, silica, calcarb. It's going to be the polycress and the nosodes, and maybe some new ones. But the lion's share is going to be what Hahnemann and people have been using for 150, 200 years. Okay. And finally, I think that there's always going to be factions of homeopaths who are going to say, well, I just don't trust the meditative provings. We're a diverse bunch. Some are going to go all the way in. Some are going to sit on the fence, and some are going to say, I just don't trust them. So how about if you do a meditative proving, why not then do a Hahnemannian proving? Why not have all aspects to confirm? Rather than just one, because I think that's how things would then get accepted and integrated into the literature. So back to integrity, back to looking at, what different routes, not just one route, can we follow? Finally, exciting things. We are now in a position of recording the evidence from our clinics. Research, scientific research, is expensive. Yeah, we just don't have the money to go into scientific research because we have fantastic clinical results and we have a paucity in scientific evidence for what we do. And I think part of that is we don't have the technology to measure what we do. Yeah. But to do double-blind trials, well, that's an allopathic paradigm. But to do research is expensive. But we all have phones, and all our patients have phones or laptops or tablets. We can now be recording biomarkers, bloods and labs results, skin lesions, and building up a library of evidence in each individual practice. And then the only way we convince the validity of our system is cured cases. But people will deny our cures unless we show them evidence. And we are now well positioned to collect lots of evidence and to show the world, here's 100 cases of eczema. Here's 100 cases of Hashimoto's thyrotoxicosis. Yeah. We start doing that and we've got a real good base to jump in from.
Well, to add on to that, I just recently interviewed Isha Banerjee, who was the new president of the Banerjee Clinic in India. And she has said that they have got hundreds of thousands of cured cases there. They just need somebody to physically go there and write it all up. So whoever's keen to go to India and write it all up, all the data is there for you. Somebody just needs to actually go in there and do it. But I just want to kind of formally wrap up at this stage because a couple of our guests have some time constraints. I know, Marcus, you've got a meeting that you need to shoot off to. I think, Dion, you said that you need to go as well. What I just want to say is thank you so much to all of you for your time. Those of you who are happy to continue recording and want to add in some more points, those of you that have to leave early, if there's something that you want to add in later on, maybe we can do a separate voice recording and you can add that on or some other way. But there's so much more. I mean, if we'd really need an entire day. And this is why most of us that are here are going to be in Bali. Mike and Dion, I think the two of you are missing out. You can still join if you want. But I think a lot of conversations are going to be had around the pool in Bali in a couple of months' time because there's so much more to discuss here. An hour and a half doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. But I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
You're welcome.
Okay, so those who need to leave are welcome to leave, and those who want to stay and bits and pieces in, you're very welcome to.
Yeah, I've got a couple of minutes. I think also we've got to realize that we aren't dealing with material doses, and this is the other issue. It's like we are dealing with dilutions. We're dealing with dilutions of remedies and succus that are beyond the chemical range, and we are into a whole energetic space with homeopathy. And I think at the moment, if you look at a lot of things that are online, social media, there's a big interest in vibrational medicine. There's a big interest in frequencies. It's got a lot of traction now around the world. And I think that we've also got to remember that as well, that we're not prescribing allopathic medications. I think, Hilery, you mentioned this homeopathy is safe. It is, but also we need a different way of thinking. And I think sometimes in homeopathy, we think as allopaths. We prescribe in an allopathic way often. So I think we've also got to remember that those remedies they're just like key to a lot to stimulate the vital force, what we say in homeopathy. So I think that also needs to be bear in mind as well.
I just wanted to speak to what or add to what Danica was saying about the language, especially in some of these meditative provings, coming from the darkness into the light. And I think Danica said that, she kind of understands that language. And I also feel like I understand that language as well. And in my practice and what I've commented on a few times, I think I've said it a number of times, it's this evening here, so I'm going to say this evening, is coming to what is perceived to need to be cured in our clients and what is curative in medicines. And coming to that point, we may all come from a different place. And I know personally, my journey and understanding as a homeopath, and I think where I find the best results is using my intuition. I have a long history with a meditation practice, and when and we all bring different tools into our practices with us. And when I learned to utilize the other senses that I had to prescribe remedies, I feel like my success with my patients actually increased exponentially. And so whether you do it that way, whether you are a really good, you just take the location sensation modality, and whether you just really nail it like that and your patients get better, I just think that's amazing.
Sarah, can I jump in? Because this is something that I've thought about a lot recently. Mm-hmm. And intuition or epiphany, do you think this is built upon your study and your experience, or do you think somebody who's done 3 months training can have equal intuition?
No. Yes. Good.
Yes.
Good.
Because epiphany means reveal. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been a teacher at the School of Intuitive Homeopathy since its inception, and that was one of my things that I was speaking with in the beginning, is that we need this left brain grounded knowledge You don't just go, oh, I think it's like it looks like that flower, therefore I'll give that flower as a remedy. No. That's not.
I agree.
Definitely not what it is. It's very much grounded in, we only know as much as we know. We only kind of can bring in as much as we've kind of learned and understood. So absolutely, it's not like guessing a remedy, but the intuitive part for me also comes in when it's like in the case taking process, intuitively knowing. And I think we all do this, to be honest. We can call ourselves intuitive or not, but as a homeopath with a number of years of experience, you know where to go in a case and what's going to be important. After you've sat with thousands of clients, you know which route to go down, and that could be intuitive. It's experience. It's grounded in all of our education as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I agree. I mean, my problem is that when I teach students and they're, first year, and they say, oh, I don't have to study materia medica, I can just intuit the remedy. And I think, bet you can't.
Yeah.
Because it rests on what you've studied, learned, and experienced already. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
And it's that left brain knowledge, that we have to really acknowledge as part of it. It's an important part of.
Go for it, Marcus.
I'm going to have to go, guys. Sorry, I'm going to have to go.
That's okay.
Everybody. Good to see you all.
Bye, Marcus. I'm going to have to go as well, but I just want to say one thing before I go.
Go on, I'll wait.
I use meditative remedies. Don't get me wrong. I think I just like the provings to be quite grounded, and I love the use of them. Really grounds them more. The clinical use of them actually grounds them, and I love the work that you're doing, Danica. I think it's great, and just as a person who was qualified first 45 years ago as an acupuncturist and then studied herbal medicine, I always say to people that there is nothing with the depth, breadth, and scope. There's nothing else with that the scope of homeopathy. And Danica, I work a lot with pathology. That's kind of makes up the most of my practice. But the working on that soul level, it's intriguing because I do think that homeopathy is the only kind of medicine that can change your past almost, release those histone tags and metal donors that create the epigenetic stuff that we inherit that isn't ours, that we carry. It can release that. I believe it can shift karma. I'm getting a bit airy-fairy myself now, but I just think the depth of homeopathy and the scope of homeopathy is fantastic. So in no way do I want the people who are doing the intuitive and meditative stuff to stop. I think it's the way homeopathy is going, and I don't think it's in any way a bad thing. I love it when it's more grounded. I love it when it's being used and we get clinical appreciation and clinical evidence and more knowledge. But I think what you're doing is fantastic. But I must go now. Looking forward to seeing those of you to Bali, and Marcus, I'll see you next week, and Mike, I'll see you sometime soon. Take care.
All right,
okay. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Thanks. Nice to meet you, Danica.
And I just want to say that is why I love Hilery so much, because she's so grounded, but she's always stayed so open-minded. That groundedness is there, but that open-mindedness, like she's always keeping an open mind as well, which is amazing. There's going
to split, guys. I've got to hit clinic. So, nice to meet you all.
I didn't realize so many. I thought it was just Marcus that's leaving. So many have left now, so we can actually stop the recording. I might just keep it going anyway in case there's some gold nuggets that we want to put in. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Sarah, it's like I think I'm getting cast into the sort of, the classical, entrenched, this is what homeopathy is. Not at all. By no means am I like that. It's really at all.
I see you as a voice of reason, Mike. Like, I actually think it takes balls to actually stand up and say something different to the narrative. So that's why I was happy for us to have this conversation, because I think it needs to be had. Like, it's not everything that happens in homeopathy that I necessarily agree with as well, or think it's right. I'm happy to stay open-minded, but it's good that we kind of call it out. And there is a lot of ego in homeopathy. I've seen that with a podcast, especially. So much ego.
Absolutely.
So much.
it's about common sense, the spirituality, if you like, of common sense. It's like being earthed. As somebody said to me, you can get so heavenly, you're no earthly use whatsoever. And I think
true.
that's the problem. And so, Sarah, pleased you said about intuition. The difference is, people saying they see something intuitively. Well, I can't play the piano intuitively. I can't.
Me neither.
It's the same thing. You need that information, that the stuff underneath that, the experience or whatever you want to call it. It's when you see, as you say, Eugene, it's getting into ego. You see this stuff coming in. I see cases that I know weren't true. I mean, I know they're not true. And these are known homeopaths. And that bothers me, that people feel they need to lie about their experience. That gets fed into the thing. That's where I get worked up. And I think, the same with Hilery and Marcus and all this. We all see this. So, yeah, but by no means am I some sort of, entrenched homeopath who's, only using direct proving by Samuel Hahnemann. You can't do anything like that. I'm not saying that. But I do want to see, as Hilery said, the evidence behind it all, if you're saying intuitive, you do need that left brain stuff. If you're saying meditative proving, what's the problem with having a proving as well to go along and compare? Absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. When it gets a little bit removed, and I think the word is ego, I think you're quite right. I think it's when you can smell it sometimes, you can smell it in homeopathic lecturers and guru types and all. You just feel it's not really coming from the heart. And that's what bothers me. Is it coming from the heart? If it comes from the heart, I'm very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've ranted again now, Eugene.
Really?
I'm going to go.
Oh,
No, I love it. And I'm actually already sorry. I'm just going to keep this whole recording as is, unless any of you have already said something you want edited out. But that is so brilliant.
What if I swear? What if I swear?
That's we've dropped lots of F-bombs in here. We've in fact, who was it? Was it you, Danitza, that dropped like a bunch
me,
of she dropped like F-bombs and we're
Okay,
talking about
yeah.
vaginas and balls and everything, and I had to put a warning in the end.
my
And now I
God.
probably have to.
I'll go, darling.
Oh, you got to go. No worries, it's fine.
I just want, before you go, I just wanted to say one thing as well, Mike, because I feel like there's an assumption or maybe a confusion that intuitive homeopathy means kind of guessing the remedy, in a way.
Yeah.
And even amongst students, I think that there is some confusion around that, and perhaps it's for me it's like something that needs to be defined, like what does it even mean to be an intuitive homeopath. But it definitely needs to be grounded. We can only kind of work with the field that is in our awareness. We can't maybe some people can, but I maybe consider that would be guessing as well. What's important.
I speak to that as well. Just we've got to go, but super quickly. For me, there's this piece around we come out of, and this is very medical, field and a body of knowledge that's about knowledge. And for me, working intuitively is about having the knowledge, but allowing ourselves to feel that knowledge. Mm-hmm. So it's about still having that in place, but the intuitive piece is about the feeling. Mm. And that's not how homeopathy has historically been taught. It's been purely knowledge-based, like medicine is purely knowledge-based. And what we're moving into is how we expand our knowledge. So we've got the knowledge, but that we feel it too. And so when I teach the remedies, I invite people to not just know about the different rubrics, but then it's like, and actually knowing all of this, now step into how it feels. Mm. And to me, that's when we really start to understand remedies. And that's what then helps with intuitive prescribing, because all that's happening with intuitive prescribing is we're then feeling as well as knowing.
Right.
I think the thing is, it's about safeguards as well. It's sort of, because the number of times I've acted on intuition and I've been wrong and fucked up because my intuition was wrong somewhere. So it's like, how do you, and I think the same with meditative proving, which is why I think Hilery or Dion's saying, have the provings along, so let's really see how they compare. I think the thing is, it's like, for me, intuition, I would say I'm an intuitive prescriber, but I've got a safeguard, which is the repertory, which is more objective and will, and of course the reaction to the remedy. So, and it's knowing when it hasn't worked and knowing that, that my intuition just hasn't really helped me here, or it's not working here, or something, or what? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm.
Right, right and left brain.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to the way that we are each a homeopath and the way that we find this in common. Because for me, I mean, I certainly use the repertory, but sometimes the repertory gives me shit, gives me
absolutely
offer again or whatever. And it's like, well, that doesn't quite encompass what it is for this patient,
Yeah.
Then I'm using the other tools, and like Danica said, using the feeling of the remedy or the feeling of being with this patient, the connection, bringing it down into the heart and how you kind of connect and can be with the patient as well, is using those kind of tools has been helpful for me in my practice. Sure. Yeah.
All right, Danica. Well, lovely to see you.
See you, Mike.
I've got to go.
No.
Okay.
See you. Bye.
See you again sometime. Have a great time in Bali. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
I go. Yeah.
Such amazing space. I just want to say how you're just incredible, honestly.
It's such a pleasure. What I was going to say is I love how you described that about feeling. I don't know, was it you didn't? So they said that feel that, because I realized that was game changing for me, as I was so in my head, work. And the second I kind of dropped into my body and I was trying to stop repertorizing in my head already and actually just like, what is the energy that I'm getting off this person? What is it that they're like, not listening to even the words as much as just like, what are they, what is maybe their soul trying to tell me? Like, once I dropped into that, I was like, oh, okay. And I'm still learning that, like, that was kind of like a recent revelation, like maybe the last, I don't know, couple of years or so, but I feel something that I need to hone into a lot more. And that course that I've just done with Sarah, that's really helped me a lot too. I had a client the other day, real, like, I'm somebody that can hold my energy pretty well. People don't drain me, but she drains the life out of me, which is actually interesting considering she's a healer herself. And then I just, instead of like I was like putting my guard up big time, because I literally felt the energy draining from me, which, like I said, it's unusual. People don't drain me. I'm an extrovert. I get energized by people. I've just had on day 3 of COVID, and here I'm sitting with all of you chatting, but you guys energize me, even though it's on Zoom. I actually feel energized by people, but she just drained everything out of me. And then I just sat there, okay, what is it that her soul is actually trying to tell me? Because she's desperately needing something from me. And to actually just listen to that. And I think that's where the intuition part comes in as well, right? It's not just, it's good that we kind of started differentiating that in our conversation today, that it's not, you're not just like making stuff up, but there is the grounding. There's so much more that we need to have a chat about. So much more. But this has kind of started to scrape the surface. We really need like a full day chat, or even like, minimum 3-4 hour Joe Rogan style conversation to really get into the nitty gritty. We can finish up here, ladies. Shall we just say a big bye? Bye.
Bye. Good to see you both. Lots of love.